Hello, and welcome to Shrink, the podcast for the mind. I'm Philippe, and I talk to the people who want to have a better understanding of their issues with weight and body image.
Because we met and we understood that there were so many points of connection with our practices, but also coming from a very different point of, well, actually very different practices, but somehow a lot of connection between the subjects and also experiences with clients that we had, and also personal experiences, right?
Yeah, and I mean the whole thing that, first we became friends because we have friends in common. A very good friend in common, and then we were both. We noticed quickly that we were both really interested into living things in a more intuitive way, and spontaneous and fun. And we spoke about it earlier this morning, and thinking, because you see clients as a personal trainer. Do you see a personal trainer?
Yes, like I see clients one-to-one. I used to do classes as well, and I mostly do one-to-one. So I get a really in-depth, quite intimate experience. I don't know if you've ever had a trainer, but it's quite like it's a very intimate space. I usually go to people's houses, and I'm in between their workshop, especially now they work from home, etc. So it becomes like a really intimate space, and the kind of language that they've used about themselves and about their goals was very similar to some of the things
it's tough language.
Yeah,
and people judge themselves and see themselves. Both my clients and your clients are really, people who are doing well, let's say, in general in life, and they're really nice people. When they speak about themselves and the way they see themselves, it's so tough, it's so hard, and it's so unfair. I've got some clients, female clients or male clients, but I've got more female clients who, when they describe themselves, they say, well, look, I look like a pig, or I look, I'm so fat. And the beautiful, I mean, when I say beautiful, it's not just aesthetically, they're beautiful, but it feels like because they are like 5 or 20 or 40 kilos extra, they have this extra weight, suddenly their whole personality is affected by that.
Yeah.
And so when I meet them, usually they think I'm going to tell them what to do. They think,
they are looking for a solution. And I think I really understand that for myself, to be honest. I don't find it strange, the way that works out. Like I really understand it from first-hand experience. I've struggled in my 20s with food disorders, and that was one of the reasons why I also went back to Italy. Like it was a very intense time for me also in that way. And one of the things that was happening at the time was I had started therapy as well at the same time, and it was so obvious that I couldn't give myself any kind of affection and intimacy and warmth and kindness. And somehow I remember at the time my therapist was like, how would you approach this problem if someone else was telling you?
Way to do it.
And I was like, well, I will tell them that they're okay and that everything is going to be like that. And she was saying, why can't you approach it in the same way when it's about you? So there's like a really interesting connection again here between the way we perceive ourselves. I guess we're talking a lot about body image in our conversation together, and that's when our practices join, and our idea of self, and how much the two things actually don't correspond. Like often we can't give ourselves what we actually need, and somehow that makes us longing for it on the outside, right? And the moment you're starting to long for that on the outside, you're taking an agency away from you. You become more reliable on things being sold to you by the society that we live in, by other people's beauty standards, for example.
And it's never going to be good enough. It's never going to be good enough. So that's because now it's the beginning of the year. So I have so many demands, and so do you. New clients who want to start a diet or start exercising, and there's what they want to achieve is not realistic. They want to get to a point very quickly, and I know that even when they will get there, they won't be happy. It's like they're never good enough.
And the system works on that.
Yeah,
like it wants you
look
to...
at all the ads everywhere.
Yeah,
it's about
exactly.
diets and
we were talking about, I received this, so Spotify few weeks ago, like the beginning of the year, was sending me all these emails about workout tracks that I could listen to. So it's kind of suggesting that I should be exercising because it's the beginning of the year and it's the new year. And just yesterday, I received one about relaxing and chilling out. So they're constantly telling you, they're basically bullying you in some ways. And then they're caressing you out of the bullying by sending you, and that becomes two products, right? So that straight away you've been subjected to two messages. They're like competing and one against each other, and you're left in the middle without really knowing who you are. Probably quite exhausted. Like my experience with most of my clients and myself personally is also that is a very tiring, negative, poisonous thought process.
And it's also tough. We're going through some very tough times. I mean, these last 2 years and the pandemic, but other things as well. It's very frightening, very scary, very tiring as well. And there's a lot of loneliness, a lot of anxiety around. And so that's what, we should tackle more. It's like, what do we do with all that? Is going on a diet going to solve your anxiety, your loneliness, all these emotions that you carry with you, and that you like inundated by these emotions. So that's our thing is to have a gentle approach, to do things in a gentle way. It doesn't mean so it's taking action. So it's not like just being gentle and everything is going to be all right. So when I work with my clients, for example, I question them. I want them to look back to see how they got there, to that place where they started being uncomfortable or unhappy about themselves, about the way they look. But it's not only about the way we look, of course. It's also the way we see ourselves. I've been through that as well. I was really overweight. I was so heavy at some point in my life. I did diets. I think I did them all of them. I would lose the weight because diets work. In fact, diets do work. So you lose the weight, but fundamentally, if you haven't changed the way you see yourself, if you haven't learned how to eat more intuitively and how to be kind and good to yourself,
and conscious and aware.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. And same with
same with exercise.
Yeah,
it's exactly the same. Like I. In my practice, one of the things that me and Philippe really understood together right at the beginning of our friendship was this shared experience of clients coming to us wanting quick fixes and getting them to some degrees, but because they are not fundamentally changing the perspective and the structure and finding out also what happened that caused those things to become like symptomatic responses to it, then it will just go back into a cycle. And the moment you're in a cycle, you're potentially not allowing yourself to grow. And a real change is not going to be able to take place in a position of like cycle, right? Because we are going to be stuck into this shape over and over again throughout the years. And in training that I have, it's even harder to bring in this level of awareness, I think, from the point of view of a trainer, because people come to you directly with cosmetic goals most of the time. Like
what would they ask?
I had clients asking me for like a specific size of calf muscles. Like that just happened a few months ago because they wanted to wear these heels that had they wanted to wear these boots and they didn't have enough calf muscles. And I have to say that the amazing thing is that because of the process that we then instigate together, because it's a conversation as well with the client. I just don't come there, especially because of intuition. You don't just come there with a set and a program and you just put it on top of the other person and just make them do what you want to do. It became this kind of conversation where the client at the end completely shed away all this ideas and like these fixed goals and just started to actually enjoy again, going back to fun, started really enjoying the sessions and really enjoying moving their body. And like, especially because of the pandemic, it was on Zoom and they just didn't have their own movement practice on their own. Like they found it really difficult, and it was constantly tainted with ideas of having, you know, a bigger, well, I'm going to say a bigger derriere, a bigger bum.
But there you speak like that.
And like, or like a smaller, you know, tricep, like always in body parts as well, which I also find really interesting.
And not realistic.
Well, it's completely unrealistic, but also the body is not a machine composed of different body parts. The body is an interconnected, incredibly smart, incredibly advanced, star-like structure, in my view. And if you're making it about small, you're really narrowing down the possibilities. And that is something that, for example, in my sessions, I always try to convey. And it's incredible how much you go back to playing and fun when you start thinking about things in such a magical, actually, it's like closer to magical thinking in a way. And the experience is completely different. And the person got really into just moving. And obviously they got also the body that they like. But whether they got the body that they like because they started loving themselves a bit more or because they actually changed, that's secondary. It's like the two things become one. They stop being...
I've got so my clients usually when I start working with them, I ask them how much weight do you want to lose, because it's really interesting for me to know how much weight they want to lose. And they say, for example, I want to lose 15 kilos or 20 kilos, whatever. And I say, so where does this number come from? And so someone would say, well, that's the weight I had when I got married. And I said, okay, when did you get married? Well, it was 25 years ago, and you had children in the time. Yeah, I had 2 children in the meantime. I said, okay, so you think it's realistic to get back to the weight you had 25 years ago? And so people come up with unrealistic expectations. Maybe they will get there, so maybe it makes sense. I don't know, because but they come with objective, or do you say that?
Yes, yes, objective, which like facts.
Yeah, or when I was 20, I have a new client, a male client. He's 52, and he said, I want to get back to the weight I had when I was 20 because I look really good. And but he doesn't have the same lifestyle. It's not going to work. He cannot exercise the way he used to when he was in his 20s. I said when he was in his 20s, he would go dancing every weekend with girlfriend, or he was much more active, and it's unrealistic. So if you come up with unrealistic expectations, you're going to be disappointed. At some point, you're going to.
The one thing that I've noticed in my work as a trainer, but also on myself and also on my partner who was really sick and then he got better, is that there's when you start aligning your, you can call it your essence or this other thing that is not your mind and it's not your body necessarily, this yourself as a whole. When you start aligning that, things become possible that I didn't think were going to be possible. So unrealistic goals can become realistic within a space where things are very, very connected and very intuitive and very aligned. And the problem is the assumption at the beginning of this unrealistic goal that straight away sets up like a sort of bullying strategy against yourself.
So what does it mean? Sorry.
Go on.
No, so what does it mean? Because we both, sometimes when we talk about it, we get into details and we don't want to make it sound difficult, because in fact it's not difficult. It can be challenging to be more intuitive because we've lost this intuition, but it's there, it's inside us. So the intuition that is telling you, I'm tired, I'm going to go to bed, because instead of keep on watching a movie until late and thinking, why did I go to bed that late? Or intuition when you're eating something and in fact you're not hungry anymore. It's there. So and same goes with moving. With moving, and so it's something we have inside us. So it's not something we have to. We can work on getting back in touch with this intuition that's we're born with. It's cool because sometimes sometimes my clients sit. So I see some of my clients in my therapy room, and then I say, "Are you comfortable?" In fact, they're not even sitting comfortably. I say, "You don't realize." So you can go all day long not being connected to how you feel physically in terms of your emotions and your hunger.
Yes.
And once you start, it's a process. So it's like a journey. It's a nice one. So it's not like it's a lovely one because it's being in touch with yourself. It is. Yeah. It is the best one.
It requires I feel it requires a certain commitment to awareness, to be in contact with yourself I think one thing that I really like that you always say is being in contact doesn't mean to police yourself again, because that goes into again negative guilt tripping kind of ways of thinking. It's about being able to observe yourself with curiosity. So, and non-judgmental. We always are going to be judgmental, like you always say. It's very hard to create a non-judgment zone. But there's
I'm judging you all the time.
Constantly. But in the tension towards that, I think wanting that is already part of that journey. Wanting to reconnect and being aware and being curious of that awareness and being curious when that awareness stops. So that happens to me all the time because, as I said, I've got history with food disorder that also got me to this job. I didn't start this job just because I liked moving. I came out of it and I wanted to help myself by helping others as well. Mm-hmm. I know you don't like very much that sentence, but at the beginning of the process, it was very much about that for me. It was very much a way for me to share something that I had just gained for myself coming out of a very, very tough period. And I wanted other people to experience that and to be able to give them some elements of this process. With time, what I realized is that I still struggle with a lot of issues with control, and especially when thinking about movement. I don't have it so much with food anymore, which is a blessing, but I definitely have it with movement where I'm super tired, but I know I have to do certain things because that's what I set myself to do. And I'm still going to have an internal dialogue with myself being why do you need to do that? You're very tired. Maybe go to there is still this internal dialogue very much present in my mind. It's not straightforwardly going into exactly what I need. So there needs to be a bit of a leverage that this journey is going to take a while. But the more I can be kind to myself while that happens and being curious of why, for example, I feel the need to do something that perhaps my body doesn't need in that moment, the more likely I'm going to be able to be better to myself the time after and be able to enjoy that experience. So whenever I take a decision, being able to follow that through with an experience that's going to be positive for me rather than struggle throughout for an end goal.
So and same with me. Sometimes I do overeat. Sometimes I would go to a dinner and then I notice it. Then I notice why. I don't. Not I don't get scared. But I think, why am I eating that much? I just notice it. I don't judge myself, but I'm trying to understand what's going on. Am I trying to please someone who invited me? Cooked for me. So I don't want to sound like I want to be a good guest. So I'm going to eat whatever he or she prepared. Or am I bored? Am I eating or playing with the food in the plate and eating a bit, eventually drinking someone? Is it going to somehow help me not being so bored? So I have this dialogue with myself. It's not like a long dialogue. At some point, it's very quick. I know, okay, you stop eating now because you're just bored. So just say goodbye. Thank you very much for this very lovely dinner, but I need to go. I have to wake up early tomorrow. It's this connection with yourself, with how you feel physically and emotionally. Mm-hmm. And or sometimes I had a lunch the other day with someone, and that person was always talking about herself, and I was a bit, and so I was tempted again to eat too much. I noticed it. I was tempted to order something like a dessert or pudding, and then
a warming kind of
or just a way to be more to reconnect to myself because it was all about her, and she needed it. So I'm not judging her, but so at some point I told her, I said, so I just told her nicely and didn't tell her, shut up, which is tempting sometimes. But I didn't say that. No, I just said how I did feel about it, and it made a difference. So it's a quick connection to how you feel, both physically, emotionally, And I think in your work, it's about that as well.
It's so much, and one of the things that I've noticed, I'm pretty sure if you're in any way part of the health thing that is going on around, it's all about high intensity interval training and or extreme cardio. There's like classes that combine cardio and boxing, and classes that combine running and weights and then boxing as well. Like, it's just about how much you can pack within the limited amount of time that we all have to do this thing that we have to do because it's important for our health and is important for the way we then present ourselves to the world. And so much of my work with my clients is rewiring that expectation, but also, again, in my case, I do see a lot of body changes. I actually do. And you too, actually.
No, I do. And the lasting ones, but the lasting ones.
So lasting. Yeah. And the interesting thing, for example, about for women specifically, I have both men and women's clients. But for my women's clients, obviously, hormones and, there's so much stuff going on that is not just what we see.
I told you I'm interrupting. I told you the other day. So I have a client, and she said she was telling me, I don't know, for these last few days, I eat much more. I'm so much more. I feel so much more hungry. And I said, yeah, but I think you're about to have your periods, because I write it down in my diary. He said, oh yeah, you're right. So I was the one coming up with information
about because they don't track it. Yeah, and the same, like, one of the problems, for example, of only doing high intensity interval training and running, for example. I understand it's been COVID, people want to go out and run, like that's been a way of, but people running, a woman, for example, some women running every day for an hour and a half, eating a very small amount of food because they're trying to, get a certain body weight, etc. I had so many clients coming to me, especially in the last couple of years, way more than before, especially with the hormonal problems and like periods that didn't come anymore. And they didn't look specifically anorexic, or like they didn't have specific what you would define as like an eating disorder per se, but the way in which a certain kind of exercise aligns with hormones is very important. And that doesn't mean that women shouldn't run because they've got, I'm the last person who will ever say that, but it does require you to be in tune with that part of yourself to be able to then be healthy in the real sense of the word, as in, I consider health resilient. It means it makes you capable of responding to any situation, rather than healthy just being the lack of sickness, which I think is what in the Western world is mostly considered health. And so with a lot of clients I had this client specifically talking about weight gain around the arms and around the waist, and like really thin legs, and like not understanding they were doing all the right stuff. They were working out 5 days a week, doing HIIT training, but actually decreasing of pretty much 80% that level of cardio for them, and integrating it with movement that was potentially closer to something that was more Pilates based, yoga based. I do this type of movement that is called myofascial, which is a very interesting, and I'd like to briefly talk about it in a second. Actually, their entire body shape changed, and it was so interesting. And that's because cortisol, as we know, is like the stress hormone, has so much impact on where we deposit fat. There's so much impact of how our body looks as women, like, because they were all tending towards androgyny, which is completely fine, but they didn't understand why they were working out so much and somehow getting worse results than when they weren't working out. So that it's been like a really interesting thing to actually see in the flesh. Like, I've seen these people completely changing in the flesh just because actually they decreased the amount of workout hours they were setting up, like connected also to stress in the office. For example, some of them started like more mindfulness practices, like meditation. Like, I tend to advise and give as many advice as I can with tools that I found useful for myself, even though I'm not a teacher of those practices. But I definitely use meditation and qigong and a lot of kind of practices that integrate mind and body together. Breathing, for example, like I had a client that, for example, I asked her to replace HIIT with breathing for 20 minutes every day. And her life completely actually changed because she needed way more that than to go running, being screamed at for 20 minutes, up and down doing jumping jacks and burpees. So, yeah.
No, so yeah, and for me, for example, I mean, because we're all different. So it's not like I love walking a lot. I love walking, taking pictures, and watching what's around me, and listening to the sounds of nature, not only nature. And I love having coffees with friends and sitting outside and looking at people passing by. It's fun for me. I love doing that. It's my way of relaxing, and so it's some exercise because sometimes I walk a lot. In fact,
you walk so much.
Yeah, yesterday I walked for 4 hours with my clients. It was really 4 different clients in Hyde Park. It was really lovely. It was nice, and I enjoyed all of it. And I couldn't spend my day in a therapy room, spend all day in therapy room or on Zoom. So we're all different, because for some people, what I do is boring, like walking and having coffees with friends is boring for some people. Yeah. And it's fine. I think it has to fit into your budget, because that's also something. I mean, because all these things cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
So seeing me, for example, is very expensive. I mean, I find it is expensive, but that's my tariff. But you can find other alternatives. You can find some. You have to find your own way to balance your life so that you feel good about yourself and you have fun.
Yeah, the experience is like, I think the gentle approach that we're talking about, it's focused on the experience of that journey rather than the end goal. And by nature, though, the more intuitive and gentle and kind, the more undercurrent this energy becomes, like the most stable kind of undercurrent, powerful energy. It will bring you to where you have to go, and that will be aligned with who you are, because by that time you'll know exactly who you are and what you need, instead of having this kind of layering system of things that are not yourself, with underneath all the things that you are that you haven't really looked at, because it's probably too painful to look at. Like, I do therapy. It's a very painful process. It's not always a gentle process.
Not always. No.
But it was painful for me. I think obviously everyone has their own experience, but it was a very important thing for me to be able to look at all the things that was underneath, so that we stop trying to layer on.
Yeah, because it's important to understand, how did I get there? Well, how did I get to a point where I dislike myself, or I disrespect myself, or I hate myself sometimes?
And I do things that are not fun.
I do things that are not fun, and I know they're not going to help. So most people that I talk to who start that, they know somehow that it's not going to work. So how can you? Why would you do something like that? Why would you do a diet for a month, so eventually 2 weeks you can do it? Yeah. If you know it's not going to work, it's going to work because you're going to lose some weight, but you know you're going to stop. It's like the same goes with, I have some clients that start like these last 2 weeks, they start joining the gym, and I ask them, do you think you will still be there? You will still do it in a month or 2? I say, usually I start in January, but then by March or after Easter I stop because it's just boring or it takes too much of my time. So it's like a recipe for a failure. They know they're going to fail, and then they feel bad again about themselves. It's like a cycle. It never ends.
And it's connected to also the calendar of failure that our clients share is completely synced with the calendar of seasons. So the summer body, and when that becomes so the reason why your clients mostly give up after Easter is because Easter is when people take on holidays, and usually they go to places where they can show their bikini body that they've worked so hard in this horrible winter. It was such a terrible experience, so why not making it even worse by adding on loads of exercise that we hate? And it's just like, it's a very unhelpful way of operating in long term, and it keeps you very stuck. And I think it also gives you a very limited experience of what life could be. And I'm not there yet, but I really want to be there. And I think the more I approach life in this way, and the more I kind of gain this level of awareness, the more I understand how important it is to be alive in this way, like rather than just constantly being subjected to society demands and self-hate.
Well, it's society. No, I think the society bonds us to our demands.
Yeah,
so they know that we feel bad about ourselves. They don't create, the society doesn't, they don't create the demand.
No.
But they know it's there, so they just jump on it. And but that's how it is.
It feeds on that uneasiness, like as a system that really feeds on that uneasiness. So the moment we are sorted out by ourselves, that you were talking about, for example, money and like budget being involved. One of the things that I developed is in my practice is body weight practices. Body weight practice, it means that you're only using your body weight to achieve what you need. And obviously I do everything else when is needed. But the interesting thing about body weight practices is that your body, and gravity, and that's it. And your relation to gravity is your relation to being alive on Earth, because you are constantly being somewhat crushed and someone fighting against. And like that tension, it becomes like a really positive tension that keeps you grounded, but also allows you to be lifted by your own self in this very expansive way.
Really, you never told me about that. It's really
and I think that's always been an issue for me, like the idea that these kind of things are only for certain people and only certain people can afford it, and therefore only certain people, creating even more divide in a society that is already very divided, I think, between rich and poor. And so I think this gives like an accessibility where, like, once you are aware of how your body moves and what this relation with gravity is, like, as much as your intuitive relation with yourself, you have this intuitive relationship with space and with weight and resistance through just gravity, exactly, then you can have your own multi-directional intuitive practice in your own time and have fun and play in movement, which is something that I've developed more and more. Like I always include randomized and improvised movement within my sessions, just because you don't want to get stuck in like certain type of planes, you know. A lot of exercises like
you're being creative.
You're just being creative and seeing where the body brings you and where the mind brings you, because the mind might suggest something and you might try and find out that actually you can do it, or vice versa. And the more confidence you get in that, the more.
So what does it mean?
Yeah.
So for example, one of my clients, eating better, eating less, and eating better food meant she restarted cooking. She wasn't cooking anymore. She was buying food which was already pre-cooked somehow, and and it's okay. But I mean, I'm not judging that, of course, because she thought she didn't have time, and so she reconnected to her love for cooking, and the sensations, the smell of food, and the temperature of the food, and the texture and the colors and stuff like that. She became much, and she's passionate. So I never tell my clients, "Oh, you need to cook," because some of them don't like cooking, or they don't have an experience of cooking, and they're not into that. But by doing that, she rediscovered something she really enjoyed, and she started eating much less and eating in better food. So it's not like there isn't like
there isn't
one
like
way.
A fix. No way.
So what should people do then? If you had to give, so what do you do then?
I think you need to start a practice that is very multidirectional, so that you're having an experience of specifically talking about the body, of every single joint and every single part of the body. Try to move it in every possible way, and then that will like naturally guide you to what you really like, and always add something that is a bit challenging.
So like, what does it mean? So what? Oh, sorry, I'm challenging you a bit. But so what does it mean? What you just said, like
physically.
Yeah. So what should they do? So what if someone is listening to us, or because it's being recorded, like we said, and so what should they think about? So they think, okay, it's interesting. What should I do now?
I think they should keep curiosity. They should get out of what is given to them by the the health industry right now, in mainstream I'm talking about. So they should take away the idea of cosmetic goals completely and think about movement as a way, as a form of playing, as a form of experience, and you love this, intimacy. So there's a way in which we need to create a type of movement that allows us to feel comfortable and intimate with ourselves. And that means experimenting. That means obviously trying as many. I for example, try to do every day a different type of movement, which means sometimes specific techniques, but sometimes also different, not different body parts. I'm not talking about different body parts. I'm talking about different experiences of how to move the body. So one day you do Pilates, sure, great. The other day you do HIIT, fine. The other day you run, fine. The other day you do yoga. That can be a structure. You might discover within a few weeks that run is really not for you, or run is the thing that you like to do the most. Well, then that running needs to be conditioned by other ways of moving. So you don't just stress the body with the one thing you like over and over again, which doesn't mean stop playing. That is very much about playing, because you're constantly taking your consciousness and awareness, narrow down, thinking about it, being intuitive, but then opening that cup and reconnecting with a sense of whole. Yeah. So I think is a movement. Like your own practice of movement should be in movement as well. And it's exactly how every joint should move in every direction, you should as well.
But then, I agree.
It doesn't require a lot of space. You can move every joint of your body in every direction within a meter for a meter.
I think it's also about, I think you will agree with that, it's about connecting with others. For some people, they wouldn't walk by themselves, they would join
team sports,
a walking group.
I play football, for example, and that is not running, it's not cardio, it's completely it is, but it's like the way is completely that. But I mean, the way I approach it and what I get out of it, it's a game. There's strategies, there's companionship with other people, there's so many other parts of my whole mind body system that are active in that moment. Like I'm not thinking about what I'm going to gain from it. It's happening in that moment. It's an experience in itself.
And I like the idea that it's not too much of a lonely process. I mean, the intimacy we have with ourselves, it's a lonely process, reconnecting and being in touch with our emotions, our sensations. There is something there is some kind of loneliness with that. But then on another scale, it's about, I think loneliness is terrible. I think it's really, it's like we're stuck with our own anxiety, with our own dissatisfaction about the way we look, about the way we talk, about the way we move, about the way it's there all the time. It's like we're really centered on ourselves. Some of my clients started doing, because I did this for 20 years, I did some improv for fun. I was doing improvisation theater. So I suggested to some of my clients, and when they were doing that, because when you improv, you have to move, and so you're moving more, and then you have to create stories, and so it's creative, and so emotionally it's really interesting. For others, like I said, it would be like, I don't know, maybe cooking. For others, will join a book club. And the idea, at first, you could think, well, how is joining a book club going to make me lose weight? But in fact, food won't be that important anymore. I mean, you still eat and you will still enjoy it. So I hope you will enjoy it. But you will meet other people. You will share your views on books. You will have fun reading books. Sometimes not. When the book is crap, you will feel like, oh, why am I reading it? But it's about engaging with others and not being only self-centered and thinking about your body and this. Some of my clients, from the minute they wake up, not some of my clients, many people. From the minute they wake up, till the minute they fall asleep, they feel bad about themselves. When they wake up, they go into the bathroom and then they start to look at themselves. Oh, my skin, my this, my body. It's there all the time. When they get dressed, it's like my shirt is too tight. So even their clothes are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
When they walk to go to work, they think about their ass somebody's going to look at their ass I mean, I'm not making fun of them because I was like that. I was thinking about it all the time.
Every glass window was a mirror.
Yeah. And eventually, and I said it as a joke, but it's not a joke. Sometimes even when they wake up during in the middle of the night because they have to go to the loo, they will eventually think about it again. Yeah. Even if they wake up for like a minute to go because they need to go to the loo, it will be there. It's there all the time. It's so self-centered. It's so damaging. People I'm talking about, they have a life. They have friends. They have a husband, a wife, a girlfriend, whatever. They have a job. So I'm not talking about people living in a grotto or they have a real life.
I think what's interesting about that though is, and we've talked a lot about this already. Like there's a reason why those patterns or those thought processes are there. Like they didn't come out of nowhere. They didn't come out of nowhere. Somewhere along the line, they helped you or they helped us. Actually understanding that the mind is just trying to help you. It just hasn't really figured out how. Maybe there's other things, like, for example, the type of mindfulness that you're talking about can be found in the body. So how about we try to listen to the body and allow the body to give us a different answer? There might be a different answer to the one that the mind is giving us. And maybe that will guide us to somewhere different. Yeah. For example, walk into a book club. Like you need your mind to be on one side and perhaps your whole body be like, actually, I just actually need to go out right now. Like mind, body, they're all like tools for this expression of self that we have somewhere. And we can decide what part of ourselves we want to tune in, like rather than being constantly in the head. The head is useful, but it might not have all the answers, and it might not have especially answer when thinking about our body image if it's already been tainted by very toxic and poisonous thinking throughout the years. And in terms of like, I just wanted to mention quickly this like myofascial thing, if that's okay. I'm not going to go too in detail because it's very scientific and stuff. But you might have heard, it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment. It's this thing called fascia. And that's kind of like a popularized term for what is actually called connective tissue, like myofascial connective tissue. And the interesting thing of this type of tissue is that it covers everything in the body. So from your heart to every single muscle fibers, to also the entire body as a catsuit. And the most beautiful thing about it is that it separates, so it allows all the compartments to exist, but also unifies everything. So there's no one part of your body, like even if I pull this skin here, it will be connected all the way to my toes and internally as well. So your heart is connected to your diaphragm, it's connected. What's interesting about that anatomically is that, first of all, is a beautiful metaphor to talk about how interconnected we are. And the second thing is like opens up diagnosis. So, when you have a pain here and you're like, you go straight there, right? You go to the masseuse and you're like, can you please massage there? But what if actually the problem is not there and it's like in completely different part of the body, and they're figuring out why that is. And that's because it's physically and anatomically connected. On top of that, we store emotions and traumas in the body. And they've discovered more and more that this memory is this spider web, this connective tissue is a sort of sponge that absorbs, it's a shock absorber. So absorbs all these memories. And if we don't deal with them, both therapeutically, movement-wise, it will get more and more stifling and more kind of glued together physically and creates problems. And what's interesting when thinking about things with Philippe is that you can have an approach that goes from the mind down, or you can have an approach that goes from the body up. So by, for example, releasing things in the body around the hips a lot of the time, or around the shoulder, the neck, you can trigger changes in the way you operate in your daily life. When you start allowing the body to relax, what happens to them mentally? So much happens, like in my experience, so much happens. And what's interesting is that it becomes so exciting what you can actually do both ways simultaneously without having to make them the same thing, they're two different approaches, but they can be so beautifully woven, I feel.
And I like it when my clients lose weight. In fact, they, I don't know what it says.
I'm wondering.
Okay. When my clients lose weight, they rediscover their bodies and their posture and the way they move and the way they, and it's challenging sometimes for them. Because they can go to a gym, but that's not gonna help. I mean, we're not saying that going to the gym is wrong. If you like it, you can. There's some really good gyms. It's not like we're against that. This thing. No, but when you lose, when you put on like 10, 30, 50, 60 kilos, and you lose it, suddenly you feel different. When you sit differently, when you walk, your balance has completely changed. It's challenging. Like that's something I would maybe we can end with this and.
I'm going to answer to the question as well.
It is,
Lara.
It's scary to change. It's scary to these changes are scary. So along the way, when you're more in touch with your body, with your sensations, with your intuition, it can be scary because somehow, even if it's uncomfortable to be overweight or not being happy about our body. It's safe because we know how to deal with that. It's uncomfortable. We would like to change, but it's safe. We know how it is to be overweight. We know how it is.
It's familiar.
It's familiar. It's familiar, so it feels safe. So along the way, when we're tackling these things, it's okay to be scared. I think like some of my clients, they rediscover they feel good about themselves. So what does it mean when I meet a man? When a man starts talking to me, I don't have to hide anymore. Or I don't have to feel bad about myself. Or when a woman looks at me in the street, before I was thinking, well, she's looking at me because I have a big belly. I know now she's looking at me because I look good, in fact, or I feel good, and then I look good about myself. So it's scary, this changing, and it's okay because every time we change job, when we change everything, we change in our life. It's scary. So it's about being able to say, okay, I'm scared, but I know why I'm scared, and I want to take this fear with me. And then sometimes I will take it under my arms.
Make your friend.
And then sometimes I will reopen, and talk again to my fear and say, okay, am I still scared of this, or do I have new fears? But I think it's really important to acknowledge it. It's not just okay. Oh, no,
it's not a quick fix.
No,
and it's
like
a process.
Nice journey.
It's a process, and there's so much. Start and stop and cycles within this I think this journey inevitably, like I had it, you had it.